So,
okay, welcome to Hopeifiers. My name's Alan Friesen. I'm here with Daniel Zapula. Hey, Daniel, how you doing tonight?
well, so far, so good. Life is at its best every day that I get to wake up.
That is a good thing. Exactly. Waking up is a great way to start the day, isn't it? So,
well, that's the only way to get started. Because if, like, I know a lot of people didn't wake up. The problem with them is that they did not wake up anymore.
hang on one second, Daniel. I got to stop. There we go. I started playing back as we're recording, but I stopped it here, so we're all good. So, yes. Yes, there's a song everybody liked by Paul Thornton called "I'm Still Here," and that's the lyric goes, "I made it to another day. I'm still here. Hallelujah." So, anyways, it's a beautiful song. So, but today, Daniel, we're going to continue the conversation we started last week. And that conversation, we had a conversation about pleasure. And we concluded that pleasure is like a gift from the divine. It's a beautiful thing, so long as it's not your only, like you're just pursuing it blindly, or that your pleasure would result in pain for somebody else, right? So other than that, pleasure, fill your boots. It's good for you. So then I want to chat about, how do you think that we could incorporate more pleasure into our life? And I know some of our viewers are saying, pleasure, you're talking about sex. And no, well, yes, sex, but there's a lot of other things that are pleasure as well. Right, Daniel? How do you see where we could incorporate more pleasure, more of that beneficial, that life-affirming experience into our lives?
Wow, great thought. I think we said that pleasure is divine. And there's something about that it was a divine idea, and it is like, it's part of the ideal life. Carl Roger, psychology, he just really has been together with like that class of thinking. They really champion humanistic philosophy and psychology, in which they said that the whole thing is that when it comes to our lives here, we are moving toward self-actualization. Do you remember the triangle that they said, you have the physical fulfillment, and at the end you have you reach the summit of who it is that you are, which is self-realization. But again, Roger, he talked a lot about how important it is that our first need are met at the very bottom of physiological need, and then you have our safety, and then you have love, and then your pleasure, and so on, until self-realization. Even though he believed, like many people at his in his school of thinking, that self-actualization was not possible, really. Now, because when you reach that level, it's when what you are physically, what you are mentally, what you are psychologically, what you are spiritually, is all joined into one. Mm-hmm. You are fully realized. And that's where you are equal to yourself. There is no pretense. You are at peace with everyone around you. That's what he's talking about, how really at that point we are at the summit of our being. And I think at that point there is pleasure. Pleasure. True. Now, you talk about ways in which pleasure can manifest, how, and activities that people can do to actually maximize pleasure. First of all, I want to say this. If you ain't happy in your body, there ain't going to be no pleasure around.
If you said, if you're not happy in your body, there's not going to be any pleasure. That's what you said.
No, if you ain't happy in your body, there ain't no pleasure.
Exactly. I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, so that's the first thing. You're going to work a little bit more on actually on being present in your body and appreciating the person that you are inside.
Yes. Yep.
And for many times that's we miss that. And so,
Yes.
and when you do not do you out of really who you are, you're not really there, like you are disconnected, there's no pleasure. And I think the first discipline is actually practicing the art of being present, being here and now,
Mm-hmm.
you know, wherever it is that you are. And that's important. And that also means beginning to accept yourself. Those are preliminary things, because when you do, you accept who you are and you can welcome your own self in the act of life. And I think there is something that will grow into it. There is something you are preparing yourself to be able to welcome. Because any activity that you say pleasure that violates who you are, there is no joy in it.
No.
So I think at the very bottom of it, there ought to be personal acceptance. I got to welcome the self in the game first.
Yeah.
Before I say, and I think we can suggest, and I'm going to share, we can share and talk about different ways in which we can actually do that and maximize that pleasure, whatever the experience of wholesome pleasure.
Right.
You know,
yes. That's a good way to
depth of pleasure, whatever it is. But we got to begin with the things that you and I have to accept to be present in who we are, to even show our face through the internet.
Yeah. Yep.
So that I think that is towards self-realization, because in pleasure we are fully realized, you see. So the self is realized adequately and as it was meant to be. You see, can you imagine what is it that your body is meant to do?
Yes.
Some people think, well, here it is. Oh, they lack clarity. They say, what I'm supposed to do is just develop my muscles, like Arnold's. So they will eat chemicals. They will develop whatever it is. They'll grow pipes right there, but there is no brain. They're not there. So it's just about idealizing, making an idol of the body. There's no pleasure in it. There's no joy in it. And some of them, they commit suicide, a lot of them. And we all have heard about some boxers who are, you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I understand what you're saying, and I think if I'm following you along, it's really where the person is kind of using their body as a tool, but not aligned, not connected with their body. Right? Is that what you're saying? Right? I'm making big muscles on and put whatever I have to in my mouth or in my veins to get big muscles. So I'm just using the body, but not in a way that the body likes to be used. It's basically using it to achieve a result, not perhaps wellness, definitely not connection with that body, with your body, but certainly to get this result where I got 21-inch biceps or something, right? So
that's right. So there is a disconnect. In the same way, it's like I want to be just an artistic form to be looked at. It's like going to museum or seeing the torso of somebody is really great, but it's a torso. There's nothing in it. So for pleasure to be there, it ought to be in alignment with self-actualization. It ought to, whatever it is, wherever I am equal to what I pretend to be, there is joy. So I'm saying, before we move on, and we can name a few things, is that we got to be okay with the self that is I. I got to be okay with the self that is I. I got to be autonomous in a sense, yes, that is it. And I got to know that my presence here does add value. I got to really, because it's in the mind, in a sense, there is a governor in your mind. You got to turn it on. Just like I drive class 1 vehicle. I got my class 1. I remember, and one of the things I learned about big truck is that there's an idea of a governor. There is a governor inside.
Wait a minute, back up. You have a class 1 driver's license for driving semi trucks?
Yes, yeah. Believe it or not.
Did you do that as an occupation for a while, or
just for pleasure?
Just for pleasure, for driving semis for pleasure. Okay.
Because I wanted to learn.
Okay.
Cool. And so I did. And I said to myself, who knows? And
Daniel,
I,
you are a mystery, my friend. You are a mystery. I would have lost a bet about you having a class 1 driver's license. So
well, I know, like, because can you imagine seeing me with this big truck and pulling, like people will be running away. And some people did take off and call the police, saying, "We see this dude, he is pulling this." This is actually true. It was funny. That's when I was doing training. But the whole point that I'm trying to say is that we need to get back to the basics of being okay with the self. You know, that's why I said a person ought to be clear about personhood. Who am I? You got to be clear about purpose. You got to be clear about contribution. All these are just really important, because when you have all those things together, it helps you toward actualization. And the better and the more you are integrated, the better your journey toward self-fulfillment, personal fulfillment. And if you are disconnected from your body and you just do that, you are only but a body. There's nothing into it. So once we do that, then I think we can think about creative ways to show up.
Got it.
Like,
yeah.
Because
I wanted to share one thing with you. You might find interesting. Did you know that Maslow's hierarchy that you referred to earlier was actually developed on a Indian reserve, an Indian community, a first indigenous community in Gleason in Alberta? Maslow was with that community, learned it, kind of repackaged it his way. They had it as more like looking at a teepee from the top. And he put it as a side type thing structure as well instead. But that's where that came from, which is very interesting. I didn't know that. So
that's interesting. And Maslow would be the teacher. He was Carl Roger really learned, and I like the way Carl Roger rewrote the Maslow tables. And but again, both of them are humanistic philosophers. Because they believe, that's number one, that it was not determinism, as in the case of Freud, that said that who you are, there's a determinism in it. And they believe the power of choice and an option. And they also believe in the goodness of humanity, that you're inherently good. And that every human being, every individual was moving forward to self-fulfillment and self-realization.
Right.
So, and I think there is a verb in that. You know, it's like we are all becoming.
Right. So,
and to this end, so I think Roger, when I look at Roger's model, I love it because it's helpful. And even in understanding human psychology, as well as it is in understanding behavior and in understanding pleasure in particular, when we're talking about. While if you go to Freud, this is subconscious, you know.
So it's not Roger, a choice you make. You're determined to be that way. Freud, it's just this is how you are, and you can't really change it. Is what you're saying? Is that correct?
Yes, and this is that's the idea, because you know, to many psychologists, thinking is a behavior. You see,
right?
Even you it's a behavior. That's how they see it. It just all depends on how you come. But in classical thinking, it's like, actually, no, it has to be observable to be a behavior.
Oh, okay.
And that's what interesting anyways, to bring it here. But at the end of it, in Freud, is all about the subconscious. It's about you are moved by so many things in thought and pattern that he talk about sexual ideation, whatever it is that are pulling you, you know, and it was a determinism about it. But he said whatever he said, it has to do with the individual. I like to call Roger and Maslow's principle, which they say is more universal. Mm-hmm. So that means that the idea that is all people are born good, and we have a capacity to better ourselves, to show up in ways that are healthy and helpful and hopeful, and in ways that have added value. Hence our conversation today about Hopeifiers, mm-hmm. which again, if we can live that way, toward that realization, we will, our presence enrich the world. We add value to the world around us, and we elevate. Religiously, we bring glory to God, because religiously, the act of life is to bring glory and pleasure to God at the end of it. If you went to church, and then there's a song, "Thou art worthy, O God, to receive glory and honor." And he said, "For thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure thou hast created." And that the divine created heaven and earth and humanity for what?
For God's pleasure.
Yes, for pleasure. So that's what we ended last week. Pleasure is divine. In that, so in that God created us for pleasure. Now we get to participate in that act of the divine in it, which is to co-create. That's now we can talk about practical ways we can now create pleasure. Are you nice. So we went to a whole round circle to bring you to the point.
Nice. Okay. Now my example is going to be so simple. You're going to say you're dumbing this down, Alan.
Dumb it down.
Okay. Here's kind of what the way that this occurred for me, or the thought process I had about it. I was watching a chat with this Dr. Ron Friedman. He's a psychiatrist, pardon me. And he was talking about getting kind of aligning how your body normally works and what works best for your body with the type of exercise program you're going to do to keep yourself healthy. Because we don't all need or want the same thing. If I was going to rely on being healthy by running, I would just rather die early. That I'd be fine with that. But if the activity that I'm doing is something that aligns easily, it's something that I want to do, that it's something I enjoy doing, it's not a chore, it's not a burden, it's something that, hey, I want to do this because doing this, I feel good while I'm doing it, I feel good after I'm doing it. It's good for my body, feels great. And so if you're, back to Arnold Schwarzenegger and putting on the big guns, right? That was for a specific goal. That wasn't perhaps the best thing for his body, but that was to make a goal that he was trying to achieve. But if I get aligned, or if we get aligned with what comes naturally to us and easiest to us, and Daniel, I'm not talking sex all the time, by the way. That's just be clear.
Why is it you don't want to talk about it?
Oh, that'd be okay. But I'm just, I don't want to weird out any of our viewers.
Are you saying they don't like it?
Some don't. I don't know. It's good. I like it. I think there's others that might have problems with it. I'm just saying. So, that we chatted last week, we're talking about, some interpret religious types or scriptural type text to say, ooh, that's bad. Don't, this is a bad act kind of a thing. So, but here's my thought. The easier it is to do, the more enjoyable it is for you, and the benefits, and it basically serves what your body needs. So this is going to sound a little odd, but I'll give you an example for me. I've tried running, and I've tried an elliptical, and I've tried weights, and I tried Qigong, and I tried all kinds of different things. When I heard that about, trying to align what your body works best with, then I tried a little experiment. So now I dance in the morning, like 4 or 5 dances. And then the afternoon, I sing for 45 minutes to an hour. And that is my exercise program. And it's something that I want to do, that I feel good to do it. If I miss it, I don't feel as good, right? It's something that's kind of feeds my soul and my body. It's a great experience, and it kind of integrates me, if you will, right? And so it's a very pleasurable activity that still gives me the physical and emotional mental benefits of moving my body and exercising, right? And it might be like there might not be a lot of people that would choose that level or that thing, but it's something you can do anywhere. And for me, it works really well for my body type or just the way that I work, right? So that's kind of my thought, is that if you're in tune with your body, and that you kind of started off about being accepting of, being aware of, and aligned with it, right? Aligned with your body, right? That you're connected to it. That makes sense that you would know what things are going to be best serve you, right? And it's not, oh, Sally does it this way, so I'm going to do that because that's what Sally does, and look at her great results. Your body's not Sally's body. Maybe you need a different type of approach, right? So
that's good. I got you. And I think one of the things that you're saying is that you got to do out of rest.
Out of rest?
Yes, out of rest. And that rest, I mean, what is in alignment with you is not a chore.
Right.
It's like, obviously the context does matter. If you are a soldier, they won't let you just get up jump from bed and dance around and sing around.
What an image I just had. You see this bunkhouse with these soldiers, and one guy gets up and starts dancing around.
They won't like it. But
I think you get kicked out of the army.
If you're in the line of duty, it's like it's not a good idea, because you may take a bullet.
Yes.
But Forrest Gump. Do you remember Forrest Gump?
Yeah, I remember Forrest Gump. Yes, yeah.
What do you remember about him?
He ran like crazy. He liked chocolates. He was a very interesting person. I think he was a happy person in his own way, that he enjoyed life. So yeah.
But here's the story about how a man's journey to find, because pleasure sometimes, and look at pleasure and look at meaning. Look at, like, just it's quite interesting that sometimes there is a connection.
Yeah.
That really, somebody says happiness is fulfillment, is actualization. You just cannot do it. So, and I think it's important for us to do. We only have a few more minutes, but we got to do it out of rest, and that's important. And we got to find our own rhythm.
Yes.
It's got to be something that have flow on it. The whole term of flow.
Yes.
There is that kind of interconnection. It's naturally done. It's not, it's like you do it out of who you be. And I think that's important. So I like to go walking in the neighborhood. I like the rhythm of walking. Walking allows me to see the world from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. It's not just about just a walk. I believe walking is a creative act. Mm-hmm. It's like I'm co-creating, like that. That's it. Just like God in His creation is that. And I say, think about your presence as part of creating. It's an artful way of being and thinking. Mm-hmm. There is something creative in walking and taking a walk. There is something creative. Yes.
You trigger a question for me. You've heard sometimes about, like, people who write art or create art or write words or stories, etc., that kind of a thing, that they kind of perceive themselves that they were just kind of the vessel that it flowed through, right? It wasn't from them, it came through them, right? Yeah. And is that what you're thinking of in terms of a co-creation type thing? Is that the image?
Yes. Yeah. Because that's right. And by for me, from the tradition I come from, is God, we have to create, to join Him in that, and that's by the act of the creation, all those stuff. But think about that. We create love. Mm-hmm. We create friendship. Mm-hmm. We, like, every day is a creative act. We create stories. That's what give us meaning. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in meaning there is pleasure.
Yes. Yeah. No, that
And
makes sense. Yeah.
it's just like the more you connect it to meaning, then pleasure makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that it makes sense of our lives, even as we make sense of it in many ways to go around about. And so it's quite important to be present, to have this clarity and satisfaction in being here and now in the person that you have been created to be. And that to participate in that creative act, again, and I think there is something pleasurable about that. And
Well,
we already said that pleasure is divine. Yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say pleasurable in terms of it, that's leading towards on that journey to self-actualization, right? It's not a destination. It's a journey we're all on, and we'll be on it until we give up or we die, right? So as we go through that, that's how we're experiencing when we're doing things that have meaning and we see that we are of help to somebody else, that we're of value to somebody else. Well, that brings us pleasure, right? That we're, yeah.
And again, if I've always another word that you can use for pleasure is deep satisfaction, deep gratefulness, deep gratitude, deep integration with reality. It's like, it's time and space unite and stops.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's deep-seated realization and satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so in pleasure, there is becoming, and becoming equal to self and the purpose behind existence itself, actualization. And so it is so important, because otherwise people will trivialize it into becoming a self-pleasing thing. Will pleasure become your God? It's like we toy around and they live their lives in the cyber world, just trying to find anything to tickle their appetite or to tease, to please their eyes, but it doesn't really satisfy the heart. You know, and it creates a disjointed picture of self. But I am not all eyes, you see. The five senses are only but gateways, you know, to the heart and the core of your being that ought to be fulfilled, that ought to become, to manifest, you know, and in that gestation of self, it's like we are like a plant, like a flower that blooms, and like the sun radiate, we become equal to our essence, which is we are life-giving. You know, there's a life that flows out and in, through, and out of us, and we become a torrent of life. You know, it's like you add value to me, I add value to you, and we add value to the world. And there's when we went to Disney with my children, we came back and we were demonized by a little song, and I thought we were the only people. And until we begin singing it, and then everybody else is singing, "There's a small world after all. There's a small world after all. It's a small world after all. It's a small world after all." That song was like a demon, and it infested our mind. I don't know. Have you ever been there?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Did you hear that song?
Yeah, I heard it too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's it. But it is reminder, it's a small world. But as we both participate in it, we are so in our closeness, in our interlinkness, interrelationship, we are all brothers and sisters.
Yes.
You know, and there's something so beautiful about that. Anyways, pleasure, finding a way to express self, right. Deep satisfaction, to find the satisfaction, to find meaning in being.
Yes, I just want to add one thing. You said earlier about connection to your body as well. How healthy do you think it is if there's a part of your body or your whole body that you dislike. Oh, I got big earlobes. I can't be a good person because I got big earlobes, or my left breast is bigger than my right one, or whatever. I got small feet. Like, there's people who fixate on one part of their body that is different or out of the normal range, and they beat themselves up over it, right? But your body is like, you gotta love the whole thing you got. You gotta love the whole package that you have, that is allows you to engage in things that are important to you, right? To go and be of help to other people, to enjoy activities that are important for you, to be there for the people that you love in your lives. So, loving, appreciating, valuing, encouraging your body and your connection to your body, real important, don't you think?
So you're basically saying accept the self. And because basically, I've seen people, I don't know, you probably do, you talking to people and you're having a good time with them and they smile. And you see a black dot on the teeth. And your whole attention is on, there's something on your teeth, for crying out loud. And you are smiling at me and you looking at me, you don't understand. So you zone your attention on that little thing and you miss the point. So it becomes the story, instead of really, no, you don't have anything on your teeth. I can see you trying to clean your teeth. But what I'm trying to say is just like, we have that tendency. It's like we want to look at what is a little defect, and we settle and we get discouraged because we saw this little thing, an imperfection in us.
Yes.
But we fail to realize that there is glory in it. There is meaning in it. It's in the weak things that sometimes we are strong. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you don't realize that you were meant. The person who will love you will love exactly the person that you are.
Yes.
And sometimes you need to break a mirror and buy a new mirror.
That's a good one. Yes. One other thing too, self-actualization you're saying, and dang, yeah. I had a thought, now I've lost it. But here's what I did want to say. Let's continue this conversation next week. You mentioned about presence and being present and pleasure, as how that aligns. Let's talk more about that next week. Let's flesh that out. Okay, you good with that?
Sure, let's do that. Indeed, this was great.
Daniel,
thank you so much.
I always.
I think you are frozen.
Brother.
There we go. You were frozen. Hey, Jesse. Okay, you guys have a good evening. If you can hear me, bye.